Hey there, John with Owl Vans. In this video, I'm going to take you through the installation of our ladder tire carrier. It's not all that different from our standard tire carrier, so we're actually going to cover a lot of the same stuff. Let's get started. First thing you want to do, this van, obviously it's already set up on this van, but when you get your ladder tire carrier, you're going to want to start inside the door. You've got this interior trim panel. We have a trim panel removal tool. It's like an orange plastic tool. You just want to kind of slide that in the side, and then you can pull this panel off. It's just got snaps. We actually include an extra snap in the back in case you break one of those. Once you get this panel off, then what we're going to do is work on installing the plate that holds the ladder in place. I've covered that as well before. Is that to remove this panel, I've actually already removed this one, but it's really, really simple. You just work this tool in behind, and then you can kind of peek in there and you kind of lever it and pop it off. You have all these little snaps. Those are the things you need to pop off. It's really quite simple. Occasionally, unless you go slow, you can break a little snap. They're super cheap. You can pick up more from automotive store, Mercedes-Benz, etc. So I've removed that panel already, so you don't have to sit through it. Okay, so you've got the panel removed. You're going to go inside the door. What we're going to be doing is actually removing this magnetic mount, because we're going to use that hole in the door to mount the rack. It's a 13 millimeter. Comes off pretty easily. I've already got a plate installed on this van. This is an unpainted plate. You always get nicer stuff than I have. This is a powder coated plate. This is what yours is going to look like. Now, you've got 3 holes here. That's because this plate is ambidextrous. It can be used on either door. So you're really only going to use the bottom 2 holes. We include some sheet metal screws. Those sheet metal screws are for kind of ease pilot holes for setting these kind of bigger bolts that you can put in. First, you've got this hole it's got to line up with. I like to stick one of the bolts through there just to make sure it stays lined up. Once you get that through, then you can put the 2 pilot sheet metal screws through the door. And then you can actually back those sheet metal screws, take the whole thing off, and you're going to want to probably drill out. I use like a step bit, drill out to widen those holes slightly. So we designed this part that kind of looks like an upside down hockey stick. Why do we design it like this? Well, there's really little clearance in there to get your hands. You can't really get behind and hold a nut on. And so the way this is going to work, let's try to pretend we're doing this virtually, is this plate sets in there. So you've got a piece of door sheet metal on the back side of this plate. Then you're going to take this, come in the top, and lever it behind, and then you're going to use your hand to hold this up, or you can reach behind and just kind of hold it against the plate and put the screws through, and then find those nuts that are welded on the back of this. You want to tighten that down. As you tighten one, the other one's going to loosen a little bit, so you tighten them both down pretty tight, and then you're going to want to put the sway link through here, and you're going to want to tighten that nylock super, super tight, because you don't want that to move on the door. One little hint, when you are tightening that sway link, is to reach on the other side and either have someone hold or get a wrench or something and hold that sway link flat, so that as you really tighten that, you're not actually twisting that sway link, and then you close the door and realize that your sway link isn't flat. All right, now it's time to install the hinges that are these. They kind of look like C's, I guess, depending on how you look at them. They got holes in the back. Now there should be 4 bolts that you get with this. 4 of them look the same, and 3 of them look the same, and one of them looks like this. Normally we'll kind of color the top of this bolt, but you see how it's kind of narrower? That is because this bottom hole here, you need a narrower bolt. It's just that simple. So you want to go ahead and take these bolts and stick them. That bottom one sets in there like that. And then when you install these bolts, you want to make sure that this bolt is moved all the way kind of towards the side of the vehicle. That's because there's a little catch in there that can impact the top of the bolt. So once it's over here, you'll see that it's loose. That's good. Same here. So now we have these plastic. You see these little plastic washers? You slide those on the outside of the bolt. And on top of that, and then you can just go ahead and put the nuts on, tighten them down. There should be lock washers as well. You want to tighten those kind of snug, but not crank on them, because we'll actually tighten them all the way down later. You'll receive 2 hinges that look like this. These are really easy. It goes small hinge on top, long hinge on bottom. The way these attach to the carrier, so the way this goes, this hinge goes inside the bracket, and then this bolt comes in from the back side and screws in. You want to put these on before you mount your rack. These you can tighten fairly tight. This is going to be what secures your rack to your hinges, so you want to make sure that these are, 50 plus foot-pounds and nice and tight. Once you've got the hinges installed on the van, the C hinges, and once you've gotten the hinges installed on your rack, it's time to put the rack on the van. It's pretty simple. You've got a small plastic package that have 2 bolts in it. Those bolts have 2 steel washers and 2 plastic washers. Everything goes inside of this C channel. Everything goes inside of the C channel. So you've got this that's already on your rack. You've got a plastic washer goes in one side, a plastic washer goes in the other side, and then you sandwich them with the metal washer. It's a little hard to show right now, but then everything goes on like this. It's a little bit fiddly to get it right, but once you get it. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. So it goes outside hinge, you've got a metal washer, the plastic washer, the main hinge that goes to the bracket, and on the bottom, you're gonna put this nylock nut. Now once you put the nylock nut on, you see there's a little bit of up-down play. Sometimes they're a little snugger. You're gonna wanna tighten this down so there's no play. So this hinge is gonna squish down a little bit onto those washers. You don't want it to be cranked down so it's really tight to move this, but you wanna make it tight enough so that you don't have up and down play. It kind of helps because it's a little bit fiddly to have 2 people. Even though this is quite light, it's nice to have someone help hold it while you get those installed. Once you get those tightened down, it's time to thread your sway link through the door. The sway link is upside down on this setup. We've designed it that way on purpose. You're going to want to thread that through the door and use that nylock nut on the back side. Make sure that's nice and tight. You don't want that to come loose, and this platform should be level. Assuming you've got your hinges and your inner door plate all set up, what's different about the ladder tire here? First of all, you've got this bottom hoop. How does the bottom hoop install? The bottom hoop is actually steel, and the reason we do this is we wanted to bolt that onto the carrier as kind of a redundant way to make sure the tire always stays on your vehicle. It's got some threaded holes in there, you can see, and you'll also find 2 of these stainless steel bolts with washers on them, and these thread right into that. So what you're going to want to do is actually thread the bolt all the way from the back through the bottom of the hoop. It's pretty self-explanatory. Thread that in. You're going to want to make sure that's very tight. Oh, don't forget this either. This has a top and a bottom. We kind of mark the bottom with a little divot, and it also has sometimes it'll have like a serial number punched into it. That divot is the bottom, so it goes this side up. That's going to help make sure everything's nice and tight. Once you install that bottom hoop, it should be nice and tight. There should be no wobble to it. It should fit right up against the contour of that bottom tube and be nice and tight. That's going to hold your tire on. You want to make sure you get that tight. Other things you're going to need to install: these foot pegs. When you get your rack, you'll just see a threaded stud sticking off of the rack. These just screw on. You can make them nice and tight. This right here is the all thread that is going to hold your tire. When you get the all thread, this is your tire, I guess washer would be the right term for it, and this is your handle. These hold the tire in place. Why do we do it this way? The reason we do it this way is because it allows you to have different size tires, different size wheels, and move this spindle up and down as needed. What you're going to do is when you get this, that back nut is welded on, you're going to want to have one washer behind, thread it from the back of the rack forward, and then you're going to want to have, this is actually backwards on this, but you want to have a washer against that aluminum channel, and then you want to have a lock washer, and then you want to have a nut. Once that's all installed, tighten that down nice and tight. That's going to basically be what your handle goes onto. I'm going to throw a tire on here and show you what height you want that at. So you want to adjust that spindle so that it's coming out of the center of your wheel. Some wheels will have a little plastic cap in the center. You can just pop that out. You don't even really need to keep it, because if you do get a flat, you can use one of the plastic caps off of the flat tire. This spindle, again, coming out of the center of the wheel, and the way this setup works is you want to get the bottom of the tire all the way against the bottom and then rock the tire back so it's nice and snug against the back of the ladder. The cone, the narrow part of the cone goes into the center hub of the wheel, and then you've got your handle. It's really quite simple. You just start to spin your handle on. And at a certain point, you'll start to get some tension. You want to make this tight, but you don't want to make it so tight that you can't get it off if you need the spare. So you want to make sure it's snug. That's pretty snug. You see there's no wobble in the tire. It's not bouncing around on the rack. And then there's also a little hole in the front of that all thread. I'll show you this way. There's also a little hole in the front of that all thread you can put a padlock through. So right here, if you want to secure your wheel on, you can put the padlock through. Overall, the tire carrier should be fairly simple to install. If you have any problems, you can always reach out to us. We're happy to help. Our phone number and our email is on our website under the Contact Us page. I think I've covered everything. Thanks so much.